So now we'll look at a different way that we can write our constructors using member initializer lists. So let's just break down this term, member initializer list. So member means that we're referring to a member of a class, specifically member variables of a class. And initializer means that we want to initialize those member variables to some value. And we can do this in constructors, as you've already seen, by putting assignment statements within the braces of our constructors. So within the bodies of our constructors, we can make a statement like set some member variable equal to some value. This is something that we've done before, but using member initializer lists, we have some alternative way of doing these initializations. So if you look at this whale class as an example, we have a whale constructor, and it kind of shows you the syntax for a member initializer list. So first we have the name of the class, the constructor's name whale, and then parentheses. Within the parentheses, we have the parameters that we want this constructor to accept. So in this case, we're accepting one parameter, int age. And after the parentheses, we have a colon, followed by one or more member variables that we're trying to initialize to some value. And that value is what we put in the parentheses after the member variable's name. So what's happening here is we're initializing the age underscore member variable to the value of the age parameter that we're passing into this constructor. You can also initialize multiple member variables at the same time. And you can do that by listing out the member variables in a comma separated list like we do here. So in this case, in the volunteer constructor, we are initializing the name and branch underscore member variables to the two parameters that are passed in, the two strings, name and branch. We're going to initialize name underscore and branch underscore to the values of those strings. So why are we introducing this new way of initializing member variables? Especially because we've already been doing this just in a different way. Within the curly braces, we usually have these assignment statements in the bodies of our constructors. We're already setting our member variables equal to some value. We already know how to do this, so what's the point of member initializer lists? Well, one reason that we do this is for stylistic reasons. To reduce the clutter of having to potentially initialize a lot of member variables in your constructor, we can consolidate all of those assignment statements into something more succinct, like one or two lines of member initializer list notation. So this makes it a little bit easier to read the other code logic that you might have in your constructor, like if you're doing something other than just set the member variables to some value. Right? So if there's other logic in the constructor and we are spending like 15 or 20 lines of code to set 15 or 20 member variables to some value, then it might make it a little bit harder to find the logic underneath all of those lines of code. So if we instead consolidate all of that initialization logic to just one or two lines, it is a little bit easier to see the maybe more important logic that occurs in the constructor. So stylistically, in general, we tend to prefer using member initializer lists just for consistency. And another reason that we use member initializer lists is for the performance benefits. And this is a little bit more advanced because it requires you to understand what's going on under the hood. There's a very small difference between assigning member variables within the body of our constructors, as we have been so far, and using member initializer lists. So member initializer lists, like on the left here, we know that they're going to initialize our member variables. And what that means here is that we're setting the value of these member variables for the very first time, which means that we're not reassigning these member variables. We're initializing them for the very, very, very first time. So the first value that the name underscore variable will hold here is the string Tuffy. Now, if you look on the right, this is the way that we've been doing our initialization of member variables so far. So on the right, we assign the name underscore to its value in the constructor's body within the curly braces. And so what happens under the hood is that when you invoke the volunteer constructor here, name underscore, that string is going to be initialized first, and then we're going to go into the volunteer constructor's body and then reassign name underscore to the string Tuffy. So you can kind of like see that there's like a minor difference here. So on the left, we're initializing for the very first time because we're using the member initializer list. name underscore gets set to the value Tuffy immediately. Whereas on the right, name underscore is going to be set to some value by default first, and then we're going to invoke the volunteer constructor and reassign whatever was stored in the string at the very beginning, and then we're going to have the string Tuffy be what we reassign name underscore to. So there's a little bit of a performance benefit that we get by using member initializer lists because we're avoiding that extra step of reassignment.